Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Society of Schenectady. I am Tom Compron, he, him pronouns, and I will be your worship associate today alongside today's worship leader, Steve Winters Bona. Thank you for coming into this circle of caring people, journeying with curiosity, openness, acceptance, and love. May we find meaning together.
Before I share today's story, I have a mini story to share um, about why we give coal at Christmas, or where that began for the holidays. And so the concept of naughty children receiving the unwelcomed holiday present is not strictly an American invention. Other cultures and traditions have done that. Italian children know La Befana, um, the Christmas witch who leaves toys and candy for the good children, while bad children get lumps of coal. Misbehaving Dutch and German children are warned of Krampus, who is a scarier version of Santa, but who leaves coal for children if they have been naughty. And traditionally, naughty American children sometimes receive stones, sticks, or even a cold potato in their stockings. Coal became a thing in the early 1900s. By that time, many households were in the city and used coal for heating, and so it was easy to imagine Santa Claus grabbing a lump of coal and putting it in your stocking. So that's where it came from. The service has nothing to do with this, if you haven't figured that out. But nonetheless, our real story today, or our non-mini story today, is by the Reverend Sunshine Wolf, and it is called Super Tiny. Make this a little bigger. Once there was a little girl named Amanda who loved to help other people. She helped her Papa David and her Poppy Caesar to clean the house, to rake up leaves in her neighbor's Jim's yard when he was in pain and couldn't do it for himself. And she tutored her friend Sarah in math. So when it came time for her class project, um, the project was to help people in her hometown. So her teacher, Mike, assigned each student a community to people that they should help. Um, some would help people living with illness, some would clean yards for those who couldn't clean their own. Each project was a little bit different. So teacher Mike told Amanda that he would like her to help the people of Walden, the poor part of town, who are hungry. He said, "You can do any type of service project you like, but I want you to help those who are hungry." Amanda couldn't wait. She thought all day about what she could do. And when she got home, she told her Papa David and Poppy Caesar about the project. She said, "I want to make sandwiches and take them to the people who are hungry." Papa David and Poppy Caesar and their neighbor Jim and her friend Sarah made over 100 sandwiches for the poor people in Walden. The next day, Poppy Caesar drove with Amanda to Walden. She had placed each sandwich in a bag with a piece of fruit. She tried handing out the sandwiches, but no one really seemed interested in them. Poppy Caesar couldn't explain why no one wanted these sandwiches. She offered them to people who were young and old, brown and white, friendly and rude, but the answer was always the same. "Oh, I ate earlier, but thank you, no." Then she saw this little girl about her age, and the little girl seemed to be watching Amanda, observing her with a look of laughter and curiosity. And Amanda approached the little girl and said, "Would you like a sandwich?" And the little girl looked at her for a moment and then said, "Aren't you going to ask me my name?" Amanda was a little embarrassed. Said, "Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Amanda. What's your name?" "My name is Tiny." This name was clearly appropriate. The little girl was, in fact, Tiny. Tiny asked, "Why are you handing out sandwiches?" "Well," Amanda explained, "this is a class project to help those who are hungry in Walden. So my Papa David and Poppy Caesar and Jim and Sarah and I made sandwiches to give everyone." Tiny laughed. "Well, we do get hungry here sometimes, but we never take food from strangers. Some of my neighbors go to the soup kitchen each evening." She paused to laugh some more, and then she said, "Your teacher really asked you to help the hungry?" And Amanda was a little upset that Tiny thought this was so funny. Without really thinking, she blurted out angrily, "Well, what would you do then?" Had a tone to it. She didn't mean to get so mad, but she didn't like someone laughing at her for being helpful. She didn't think it was funny. Tiny stopped laughing, looked seriously at Amanda, and said, "You really want to help us?" Amanda nodded, but didn't speak because she was still too mad. "Well, then, we have a garden that the city gave us. They gave us seeds, but most of the seeds were for bad food that not any of us would eat much of, like turnips. Sorry to those of you who like turnips, but these people don't." Tiny made a grimace. "Yeah, who needs 1,000 turnips?" And Amanda laughed. Tiny explained what they really needed were healthy seeds for foods her community would eat and tools to help dig up the land and water the garden. Tiny said that if Amanda really wanted to help, she could get her class and her dad's and her friends to write letters to the city council and asking for a grocery store to be put in the neighborhood because the closest one was 45 minutes away by bus. Tiny and Amanda talked for a long time, and not just about seeds and turnips and all sorts of things, but they talked about things that they both liked, like jumping rope and singing songs and making bird calls. Poppy Caesar spent time chatting with Tiny's mom, and soon the two families were friends. Amanda decided that her project would be to ask her church, her class, at her school, her family, her friends to come down to Walden and ask the people what they needed. They helped the community get the tools and seeds for the garden and shared in a big harvest meal in the fall. It would take a long time, but eventually they would get a grocery store in Walden. They had a big festival to celebrate their success together. So Amanda learned a big lesson that day. She learned that you cannot decide what people need help with. You have to ask what they need you to do and then do that. She also learned that sometimes if you ask a stranger what they need, you might just make a friend.
Let us take some time now to sit together in stillness. You might place your feet on or towards the floor with your hands resting in your lap, wherever they are most comfortable. Closing your eyes or watching the chalice flame can help us get quiet and centered. Today, as we close out the year of 2024, a year of ups and downs for many of us, and as we face many uncertainties in the year ahead, I will offer a short prayer by Reverend Ali K.C. Bell, who serves as the Minister of Congregational Life and Engagement at the Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Bethesda, Maryland. Reverend Ali's prayer, revel in the mystery. May we find the courage to revel in the experience of the mystery. May we approach the unknown with excitement, even if we can only muster a tiny bit. May we celebrate the curiosity that leads to searching. May we greet ourselves along the way and love us unapologetically. Today's reading is from The Call to Care, Essays by Unitarian Universalist Chaplains. Our excerpt is taken from Suffering, Faith, and Hope at a Children's Hospital by the Reverend Dr. Karen Bridget Tallison, who works as a chaplain at Seattle's Children's Hospital. Reverend Tallison writes, "Spirituality, very basically, is the way we all experience life by striving to make meaning, to find hope, and to feel safe. How do we make meaning of the good things as well as the difficult things that happen to us? Do we rely on friends, family, Allah, Jesus, God, universal love, or a walk in the woods? When we're overwhelmed, what we once relied on may not help us, and we experience spiritual and emotional chaos, pain, and distress. Reverend Taliesin continues, a while ago, I visited with a mother whose 8-month-old baby boy had Down syndrome. He was in the hospital for a respiratory infection and was doing fine, but the mother had requested a chaplain, as she was struggling with accepting all that she had been handed when her son came into her life. She told me, I'm a type A personality. Everything has always been perfect for me. When I was pregnant with him, I spent an hour in prayer every morning to ensure that this baby would be born healthy. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I eat right, I exercise. Why did this happen? For quite some time, I listened to her ask, why? Her pain, her spiritual pain, evident on her face and in her voice. As I listened, I heard in her words my own litany around personal struggles. How many times do I, like parents and patients, ask, why is this happening to me? As I listened to this mother's words of pain and longing, the words that came to me were, I hear what you're asking, and I know I ask the why question too, but I've never heard a good answer to that question. I wonder if we're asking the wrong question. I wonder if our energy would be better spent asking, how? How do we live with what we have been given? How are you going to love and care for this child? The mother took this in, then began to smile. Yes, she said, I believe that's right. It's the how and not the why. Figuring out the why doesn't really help me. My work is to figure out the how. Now, I see this mom and her son periodically when they come in for clinic appointments. She is loving and caring and even joyful with her sweet son. They are both well and happy and figuring out the how just fine.
I have been trying to sprinkle in curiosity, openness, acceptance, and love as a spiritual practice for a few years into the things I do, into how I view the world. I tend to have certain views and triggers that take me down roads where I don't listen. I just shut down. If something were to happen to trigger me, my mental muscles would continue to do what they have been trained to do for 50 plus years. I assume I caused whatever felt like to me a disaster that was occurring in front of me. I felt I caused it. Those were just mental reflexes for me. In order to train myself to think differently, I mixed in a bit of curiosity, openness, acceptance, and love. When I feel this way, it has been a journey. Um, I wasn't taught to do any of those things or encouraged when I was younger. Um, I was encouraged to be curious about school and learning and things like that. But once I asked hard questions like, why is that happening? Why do we have to do it this way? Or just why? My father would always respond to me, to my why question by saying, "Why is a crooked letter?" and not answer my question. As I got older, I started to ask how come instead of why. I still got the same answer from my father. Um, Sometimes he would sprinkle in because, or he would throw in curiosity killed the cat a few times. Some of you may have heard or even used these sayings. And it's funny that both of these sayings originally meant different things. Why is a crooked letter? I never knew where he got that from, but I found out that that's something Mark Twain used as a way of saying there's no easy or obvious answer to this question. And I feel he thought that with time and care, it can be figured out. For quite some time, oh, nope, sorry, went the wrong way. The saying, curiosity killed the cat, isn't the full saying. It's curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back. I tended not to hear that last part, so I took it as asking hard questions as being a bad thing. The point that I think the complete saying is trying to get at is, like all things, curiosity in large quantities may be a bad thing, like drinking too much water, like having feet of snow fall on you, or having too much fog to drive through, as I learned today. Um, but once you discovered where your feelings were coming from, that brought me some satisfaction or calm. What I didn't realize back then was that curiosity or being curious is part of human nature. Thinking about how we advanced technology wise, the very least for the last 100 years, that wouldn't have been possible without curiosity or the program Star Trek. So, so what I have done is to try and sprinkle in curiosity about some things. Some of that's easy. For instance, if I'm curious as to where a term came from, I can just Google it these days. The internet can be wonderful sometimes. Sometimes. What was harder was asking myself, how was I responsible for other people's feelings? Where did that come from? What was I really feeling as opposed to what my mental muscle or what my muscle memory was telling me? Being able to explore that has brought me some satisfaction and direction. I also needed to be open, not just to the possibilities of what could happen or what could be or what is, but also open in a sense of what am I willing to share with myself or with others. Taking that chance on sharing what is really going on with me instead of just responding okay when someone were to ask, well, how you doing? That's difficult for me. I was taught at an early age that everyone was out to get me. To this day, I don't know what it means if someone were to get me, but I know I don't want that to happen. So again, my muscle memories is not to trust anyone or people or myself. The I have been told you don't know what's good for you countless times, and I now believe that I don't know what's good for me. So how do I begin to trust others and myself? Maybe you felt that way too, or were told you weren't good enough. How do you or did you get past that? What I did was took a brave step. I took a chance on myself. Started small. I tried to be more authentic with how I responded to situations and to people. If someone asked me how I was doing, I either was honest or I said I just, didn't want to answer the question. It's easier for me to answer other people's questions. It was harder for me to be honest with myself. Those darn muscles would start to work like they always do. So I had trouble being open with myself. It's hard to listen to all the internal voices at once. I tried to focus on the ones I could handle. It took small steps. I listened to what I was really feeling and began to trust that I could handle it, that I did know what was good for me. Once I've gotten curiosity and openness down, I started to mix in a little acceptance. That also is scary for me. It seems like everything's scary for me. Um, Growing up, I was taught I was responsible for people's feelings, for other people's feelings, especially my mother's. And that is a heavy burden. On top of that, I was taught to accept that my feelings didn't matter. It's not an easy place to start from if your muscle memory have those beliefs attached to it and you've accepted it. The Serenity Prayer, which some of you may have heard, was a big help to me. The prayer was written by Reinhold Niebuhr and goes something like this: Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It's not easy to do that. It took a lot of practice to realize that I didn't have to be perfect. I felt I needed to be perfect in order to control everything and keep everyone happy. It was a relief when I realized that perfection is not the goal, but progress is. UU minister Mark DeWolf wrote, "A person is a puzzle. Sometimes from the inside, it feels like some pieces are missing. We are puzzles, not only to ourselves, but to each other. A puzzle is a mystery we seek to solve. And the mystery is that we are whole even with our missing pieces. Our missing pieces are empty spaces we might long to fill, empty spaces that make us who we are. The mystery is that we are only what we are, and what we are is enough." To be able to accept that I have missing pieces and that I am still enough, again, is progress for me. And the last piece, or the second to last piece to this practice, is to sprinkle in or add love into what I'm doing. You, Reverend Jen Crow, says, "Love can't fix everything, but it can keep us company. It can help us imagine ourselves through the perspectives of others, the ones who won't give up, who whisper through the ages, 'Let's see what a little love can do.'" So when I'm faced with a situation that causes me stress or agita, I try to respond in a loving way. Now, you all may not believe this, but I can have a tone. Um, Even if I talk like this, my kids hear that tone. I don't know why, but they just hear it. You can ask them when you see them. Um, in order to change my tone, I try to have loving thoughts or think about how to respond in a loving way. So when I do, there's a touch and love in what I'm doing. Does it solve my problems? No, it doesn't. But what it does do is ensure that I don't wind up on some viral video because of my tone. It also helps me realize that I am worthy of love, and so are others. And if I sprinkle a little love into my responses, maybe the other person will do the same so that we can have a conversation instead of an argument. And it's not easy to do. Some people act in ways that make it hard for them to be loved, or you just aren't in a loving mood. Or if you're a Yankee fan, you might not love Juan Soto these days. All of it's fine. Adding in love to what you can do or what you do can help calm your nerves. And with all this, I'd like to share this experience that happened this summer. My family and I were up in Niagara Falls, and we were on the Canadian side. As you may or may not know, it can be a bit chaotic there. Parking can be troublesome to find. And I was driving and pulled into a parking lot, paid the charge, went in, and when I drove in, the attendant comes out, starts laughing at me, and says the lot was full. Now, my normal response to this, or with my muscle memory, would have been, yeah, that's right, sir. I'm an idiot because I should have known the lot was full and would have laughed at myself along with him. Those are thoughts that I have all the time. What happened, though, was in the span of that nanosecond, it's like time stopped or stood still or slowed down. I felt like I was in the zone and I sprinkled cold into that situation. So I was curious as to why this person thought it was funny that I paid for a parking spot when there was no way for me to know that the lot was full. There's no sign, there was no nothing. I was open to the fact that this person may not have done their job well, and they did not stop me from coming in the first place, and that I couldn't do anything about that, and it wasn't funny. I accepted the fact that I'd already paid, couldn't change that, and I still needed to park. And then I thought, how do I respond to this person in a loving way? Now, an anger response wasn't going to help me. And so I just looked at him without a tone. I said, "Sir, I don't think that's funny." And the gentleman apologized and actually was able to find us a spot. And the reason this story sticks with me is not really because of that. It's because of what happened afterwards. Because the kids and Abby were in the car and they looked at me after we got out of the car and they just said, "We're very impressed with you that you stood up for yourself. That is something I rarely do." And then what the kicker was, the kids looked at me and said, "And that was a really funny response." So if you see them or Abby and you say, "Sir, I don't think that's funny," they will laugh when when that happens now. Um, I'm proud of how I handled that situation. And yeah, it's a small victory, but I also think there's some bigger pieces to this. I stood up for myself, which again is something I don't really do. Plus, I modeled that behavior for my kids. That's progress. That's an awesome feeling. It was just like what Tiny and Amanda did from our story earlier today. Both of them were curious about each other. They were open to the possibility of helping each other. Uh, and they accepted that there was another way to help people. And instead of letting anger take over, they sprinkled in love in the responses and listened to each other, and they made friends. That's the last part of all this that I never really realized as part of this spiritual practice. It's the listening. It's like a silent L in all this. Because if you go through all these steps and you don't listen to yourself, how are you going to change your behavior? Tori Amos' song Winter has some very, what I will term, complex lyrics, and I can never quite figure them out. If you're familiar with her, her lyrics are befuddling to me for most songs. Um, but this song always stuck with me. I loved it. It's a beautiful song. And there's a portion of the song that really has a lot more meaning to me now. And I'll share it with you. It goes like this: I hear a voice. You must learn to stand up for yourself because I can't always be around. He says, when are you going to make up your mind? When are you going to love you as much as I do? When are you going to make up your mind? Because things are going to change so fast. This spiritual practice has helped me so much in dealing with things and people. I am going to attempt to try and expand how I use it. And I'm a bit worried about it, but I'm going to try and engage with people I don't agree with. I'm curious as to how that will all work out. I'm sure I will share it with all of you at some point, whether I'm successful or not. I am open to that possibility that I may be wrong or that we may both be wrong. And I can accept that I may not be able to change someone's opinion. And maybe, just maybe, love won't fix it, but it'll keep us both company and give us an opportunity to listen to each other in the future.